Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in the ancient city of Tzipori, the capital of Galilee in the times of Jesus. Shall we delve into the history and archaeology of this place? We will see the theatre, the synagogue, the beautiful mosaics, and also the famous Mona Lisa of Galilee. And we will end the day trying to unravel one of the biggest mysteries of the Bible. Where was Jesus between his ages of 12 and 30? The years that are not accounted for in the Bible. Could he have lived and been here inside Tzipori on these very streets? So if you're ready, let's get started. We start our day on the main avenues of the city. We see here one street and another. They are the Cardo and the Decumanus, and see that they are original from the Roman period. We know this also by the type of pavement. Look at these stones placed here diagonally. They were placed this way because on this street, over centuries and centuries, carts and carriages passed. In fact, we can still see their marks here to this day. And if the stones were placed horizontally in a way that might seem to make more sense, the wheels would lock between the stones, pushing them apart, destroying the street, and of course, often breaking the wheels of the travelers from this place. And precisely because the Romans made such well-made, detailed constructions, they have survived here to this day. We are walking through Tzipori, also known in English as Sepphoris. And in ancient times, it was a city of no great importance here in Galilee. However, everything begins to change in the year 63 before Christ, when the city is conquered by the Roman Emperor Pompey, who declares in 55 before Christ to set it as the capital of all Galilee. And during the years that the city was the capital, a lot of money was invested here and impressive architectural projects were built, part of which we are going to see today. And it was the capital until the year 20 Anno Domini Christ. Note that a good part of this period are precisely the hidden years of Jesus, about which we are going to talk today. The city of Tzipori had a great variety of populations living here. Jews, pagans, different peoples lived here. And that's why we can see different influences here also in the mosaics. This mosaic is the mosaic of the Nile River. This column that is here on the side, it is called Nilometer, which was a column that really existed in ancient Egypt, which marked the height of the river every year. And depending on how much water was in the Nile River, this influences how much agriculture they could do, that is, how much food they would have to survive. All the mosaics we've seen here are beautiful, but how in the ancient world did they differentiate the mosaics that were considered chic and expensive from the simpler mosaics? There are a few ways. The first is the size of the stones. The smaller the stone, the more stones need to be placed to form the same size mosaic. This means more work, more labor, and more costs. And the second way to know the price of a mosaic is the amount of colors in it. Look here, for example, behind us. The mosaic stones, they are not painted. That's why the colors have survived until today. The stone is naturally this color. So if you want now, for example, 10 different shades, 10 different colors to make a mosaic, you sometimes need to travel to distant regions to bring these stones from afar. And carrying stones from one region to another, sometimes from one continent to another in the ancient world was very expensive. So the more colors, the higher the cost as well. And we will, as I said today, get to know the Mona Lisa of Galilee, which is one of the most fantastic and expensive mosaics of the ancient world. And what we're seeing here is just a taste of what was found in the excavations. Over 60 mosaics have already been discovered, and bear in mind that most of this place has not even been excavated yet. This place helps us to better understand the grandeur that was Tzipori in the Roman period. Look where we just entered, into a theater, here in a performance venue. Only a small part of it survived. Back then it was much, much larger. It had a diameter of 147 feet and could accommodate 4,500 people, and it was carefully designed and built to create a powerful echo. Thus, the more than 4,000 people could hear the actors, since there were no sound systems like the ones we have today. The theater also hosted public meetings, official announcements, religious and political events. Much of the center of life happened here. And this type of theater was not typical of Jewish cities, but of Greek and Roman cities. This shows once again the foreign influence here in this city. Where are we? Let's say this building might be the most confusing of all here in the city of Tzipori. We are in a synagogue, by the way. There are Jews now coming in here to also get to know this place. But what's confusing about a synagogue? On one hand, there are biblical images here, like these we see here, about Abraham taking his son Isaac to the sacrifice. But what really confuses and surprises us is this circle here in the middle. It has 12 sides. Each side represents one of the 12 zodiac signs. So we have here the zodiac in the middle of a synagogue, which is not a super normal thing, but the most impressive thing is in the middle, we see a sun. It represents the god Helios, a god from Greek mythology, who was depicted being carried by a chariot with 4 horses. What does a Greek god do in a synagogue that should worship only the one God? This place raises more questions than answers. We really don't know why these symbols were placed here, and they only add to our doubts and mysteries of this city. Let's now enter the house of Dionysius, the pagan god of wine. Come on with me. We talked about expensive and chic mosaics before, and the most impressive mosaic in this place is now right beneath us. This mosaic, it uses 1.5 million stones. Imagine 1.5 million small stones were placed here to create this scene. However, it's a pagan scene. And it's not just any representation that's here. In the middle of the mosaic, the most important design represented there is a drinking competition. Yes, literally, who could drink the most. There is the god of wine, Dionysius, competing with Heracles. And who is going to come out the winner of this competition? According to the drawing, the god Dionysius himself. because we see him with his cup turned over, showing that he finished drinking everything. And next to him, lowered, is Heracles, completely drunk on the floor. So maybe this mosaic tells us what the people in this house like to do. But the part that I do like about this mosaic is on the other side, so let's move on. Who is here looking at me is the representation of a woman. She's called the Mona Lisa of Galilee. And who she is a great mystery. There are people who try to say that she might be the goddess Venus because of her beauty. But we don't know if it's Venus, if it's the lady of this house, or if it was an inspiring muse. But what we do know is that she keeps her eyes fixed on whoever looks at her. When I'm here in person, wherever I walk, I see her eyes following me. And it's a very strange feeling that a mosaic watching us, her eyes seem to follow us wherever we go. The artist of this mosaic used a technique very similar to Leonardo da Vinci when he painted the Mona Lisa. People who see her in person often also say that it seems like she is following you. Only this mosaic is original from the Roman period. With such a technique in stone, it is really a monumental thing. The owner of this house really paid a fortune for this mosaic to be made. 1.5 million stones, 23 different colors, and not only that, we saw the perfection even in the eyes of the Mona Lisa. So why did the person who made this mosaic leave 3 sides of it blank? It's not that the money ran out. Look here, there are 3 parts of the mosaic that are almost completely white. Why is there so much detail in the rest of it and not here? Because this room was a triclinio. 3 long armchairs were placed here. People would sit here leaning back. It was a style of eating in Roman times. And we see exactly that marked out even where the chair legs were supposed to be. Now, why is this interesting to us? Because when Jesus sits down to eat the Last Supper, it didn't look like the scene painted by Leonardo da Vinci. He painted many centuries later, and he put the European style in his painting. If Leonardo da Vinci or any of us were here in Judea or Galilee during the Roman period, the wealthier people ate in this way. And many believe that perhaps the real Last Supper was seated in this way. This city really was colossal in the Roman period. We saw this fantastic house, but look how many are still here around us and how much is still to be excavated. Music. Now is the time to talk about one of the biggest mysteries of the Bible. Perhaps the answer to it is connected to the buildings here in Tzipori, where Jesus was between his 12 and 30 years. The Gospels tell us that Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. Due to the persecutions of King Herod, they are forced to flee to Egypt. They spend a period of time there, and after the death of King Herod the Great, they return to live here in Galilee, where in Nazareth. The city of Nazareth is very close from here, less than 6 kilometers. And they, as a Jewish family of the time, used to make their annual pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Do we have a record of Jesus visiting Jerusalem at the age of 12? And is it written in the Bible that they did this annually? After they had done everything required by the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. The boy grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. But after that passage, the next time we know about Jesus' whereabouts, he is already 30 years old, and it's the beginning of his public life when he begins to travel and preach here in Galilee. But what does he do between his 12 and 30 years? The Bible doesn't tell us, but many have theories about what he might have done during those years. We know that Jesus' father was named Joseph and he was a builder. Many people associate Joseph as a carpenter, but the Bible says he was a tekton. This is the Greek word for a builder. He worked with wood but also with stones. Is it believed that Jesus learned the profession from his father? That he was also a tekton, that he was a builder. We see this also in Mark chapter 6. Having left there, Jesus went to his homeland and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed, saying, "Where does all this come from? What wisdom is this that has been given to him?" And how are such miracles performed by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary and brother of James? Notice that the people of Nazareth called Jesus tekton, this word that can mean carpenter or builder. And this shows that he probably didn't leave this region because people knew very well who he was. And not only that, they also knew what he did, what his job was. So Joseph, who was a tekton, taught Jesus the same profession. Now think, the young builder, Jesus and his father, they lived in a small village in Galilee, a small town called Nazareth. Would Nazareth have enough work for both of them? Probably not. There's a good chance that Jesus and Joseph worked as carpenters in other larger cities as well. For example, perhaps plumbing a city larger than Nazareth, close to it. But there's also a good chance it was here because this was the capital, the largest city. People from small villages looking for work, it makes sense that they would come here to the big city. And mainly because in the Roman period and in the time of Jesus, precisely in these unknown years of Jesus' life, there was intense construction and expansion of the city. So maybe during these years that Jesus worked as a builder, maybe he also worked here in the construction of this city. Look closely and tell me what you think. This is the theory accepted by many about the whereabouts of Jesus. But we are not sure that this is exactly what he did, because it's a very strange thing. At 30 years old, when Jesus starts preaching here in Galilee, he goes through a huge number of cities and villages, and many of them are mentioned in the Bible. Capernaum, Bethsaida, Chorazin, Magdala, and so many others. And it's also reported by other sources, all that happens here in the region. However, nowhere is it written that Jesus came here during his ministry. The Gospels do not mention Jesus passing through this place at any time. And it's a very strange thing if Jesus, the Galilean as he is called, preached here in Galilee. How can it be that he never once passed through the main city? The city where he might have worked when he was young. So there's something here that's not very well understood. Did he preach in Jerusalem, the capital of Judea? Did he also preach in the capital of Samaria? Why then wouldn't he come to preach here in the ancient capital of Galilee, in one of the most important cities? He goes through the cities here in the region, lives right next door in Nazareth and doesn't come to this city? Doesn't he conduct his ministry here? It's very strange. Or the other option is that he passes through this great city where thousands of people lived. People see Jesus, see the miracles, hear his words, and for some reason this is not included in the accounts of the New Testament, in the accounts of the Gospels. Yes, we know that not everything that Jesus did, not all the miracles and not all of his ministries are included in the Bible. The Bible says that if we were to write everything he did, it wouldn't fit in the book. It wouldn't fit in the Bible. So it may be that it's not recorded, but it's also strange. If he came to the capital, thousands of people saw him and nobody wrote anything down. So both options are strange, and this is really a mystery. Or for some reason, Jesus didn't want to come here, didn't want to enter this city during his years of ministry. Or he came here and for some reason nobody wanted to write that down, not even the Gospels. It really is a mystery, but it raises more questions than answers. After all, where was Jesus between his 12 and 30 years? We can't be sure, but we have here the stones, the archaeology, and the historical records of Israel, which together in this puzzle can give us some clues. And so with everything we've seen here, many people believe that perhaps part of Jesus' time during these years he spent in this city, or maybe not. Maybe he spent time around here in the mountains of Galilee and he never really entered the city. I now want to invite you to give your opinion. Leave it here in the comments and tell us if you think Jesus worked here in Tzipori or not. But until next Sunday, folks, with more mysteries and more archaeology straight from Israel. A kiss and see you next time.